So, as all of you may know, recently George Floyd was murdered by a police officer. What was his name? Is it Derek Chauvin?
I think so. Yeah.
I
The,
think
and
that's his
and
name.
yeah, yeah, he really was because the second autopsy
Right.
came
Yeah, there
back.
were two of them. That's right.
Yeah, the second one came back and it confirmed that it was strangulation.
Right. Because the first one they tried saying that it was
It was
he had
cardiac arrest based
right,
on he also had they said he had like methamphetamine in his system as well.
which is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, yeah. I mean, they didn't say what amount or
right.
what
Like we literally saw footage of him being
yeah,
choked
yeah.
and then going unconscious.
So I find that not a lot of people talk about why he was arrested. I haven't been hearing a
Yeah,
lot of,
right.
but for those of you who don't know why he was arrested, it was over a counterfeit $20 bill, which is the dumbest thing ever. And not only that, it was 4 days after the incident happened, he was arrested for a counterfeit $20 bill, which is it's so ridiculous.
It's insane. That is insane. Yeah, because I think that's too because a lot of I just saw Rhett from Good Mythical Morning. He posted a really, if you haven't seen it yet, you got to watch it. It's like this video where he sends a letter to his former self because he was raised in the South and he was saying that a lot of people like him himself a long time ago would have been thinking,
Sure.
oh well, what did George Floyd do to deserve this? Instead of thinking, or like what he must have done something bad, or like he must have done something for this to happen.
Yeah. No.
So I think a lot of people have, like, especially white people, have that preconceived notion, like, oh, he must have. Instead of relating to George Floyd, like being in that situation, they're thinking, okay, well, he must have done something bad or something
Yeah,
like
and
that.
and a counterfeit dude, like everybody in the whole world at some point has used a counterfeit 20, probably without knowing it. Like it's
Yeah, yeah, no, for real, yeah, like, yo, especially me, like, all right, like, if we want to be real, like, as a magician, like, we literally always use counterfeit bills, like, we have fake money all the
yeah,
time,
yeah.
like, and not to pay for it or anything, but like, we do illegal, it's illegal to write on a dollar bill. How many of us have done that? Like, that's as stupid as that. Like, it's definitely not something
It's not something you
to be
should be
murdered
arrested
over.
or murdered, yeah, or even
Yeah.
close to that. So not only obviously he was pleading that he couldn't breathe, and but the officer kept his knee there for 2 minutes and 43 seconds after he was unresponsive, which
Yeah, that
is
was after he was
bullshit.
unconscious.
Um, so and they're
It's nuts.
also those police are also trained. They know that restraint is dangerous, and they're taught that it's dangerous. So he knew what he was doing. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
It's not like and so many people are talking about the looting and the rioting and even the
Right.
angry rioting, saying that people shouldn't be doing all these things. And honestly, this is my point. And
Yeah.
I was talking to my neighbor yesterday about this, and my point is that if this were if this were a revolution back in the day, if this were a similar revolution to any of the major revolutions throughout the world, the French Revolution, the Haitian Revolution,
Mhm.
you made your point by killing the opposition, not by
Right, right,
looting
right.
their stuff. Well, I mean, you'd loot their stuff and burn their stuff and kill them. But
You
that's my
do everything.
point. Is it could be much worse, and it's almost a mercy that this many things, this many horrible things have happened, and there hasn't been retaliation like that yet. Because it's honestly it's at this point because people have been pushed to this point.
Correct. Yeah, and it's like not only that, like to your point, we literally had a civil war about racism. Like we literally killed each other over this. So like, yeah, not only have other revolutions done this, but America itself has killed people over this issue. Like that's how big this racism issue is, like the oppression
And
and all that. So looting and rioting, it's you can't judge people that have been oppressed for years and years and years and years and years for their reactions. Like they're gonna be angry, they're gonna do things, and also I see a lot now. Instead of calling them protesters, now people are generalizing it as rioters,
Right.
and then looters. Like there's. I went to a protest 2 days ago,
Right. Yeah.
and the entire time it was peaceful all day.
Yeah.
And I attribute that to the police not actually instigating anything like they have been doing in other places, because they're usually the ones that incite this violence.
I
But
actually just saw. Sorry, not. I
yeah, go
actually
ahead.
just saw a post, literally like fucking 5 minutes ago when I was taking a shit. Yeah, we're getting real.
Getting real up in here.
And
Raunchy.
yeah, they said the Syracuse protest like had like it just turned into like a dance party, and like people
Oh,
are
was that
just
Syracuse? I saw that
Yeah.
post, but I didn't look at it. That's
yeah,
hilarious.
like people are just chilling now. Like it's so peaceful. It's and then
It's
you've got.
extremely peaceful.
I've heard that police officers are framing protesters and making them seem like they're causing more destruction. I don't know the credibility of that statement, but
Right.
that's what I've been hearing.
No, yeah, and you can't just say because there's looters or there's people that probably aren't even part of the protests that are going in, taking advantage of the situation and stealing stuff. Like, we're in a pandemic. Like, they don't have money. Like, yeah, they're gonna take advantage of that. But you can't just say, oh, because there's people looting, that this whole protest is useless, or like it's pointless, or it's muddied the waters.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that's ridiculous. Like, by focusing on that, you're just showing that you aren't aware of the bigger issue.
Absolutely.
You're not focusing.
And before anybody goes off, no, we are not. We are not supporting the destruction of small businesses in any
Correct.
way. Like we don't. I don't think that it's. I don't think that it's right to destroy a small business that has nothing to do with the issue. That sucks.
Right. Yeah,
But
yeah.
unfortunately, it's almost like a casualty of war at this point.
Right.
Because along with the protesters, you do have those people who are destroying just to destroy.
Yeah,
And
that's like, that brings up such a good point, because I love saying this to people, how if they're like, oh, like innocent people shouldn't be a part of this, and like, no, they shouldn't. But I guarantee that same person who is saying that has no problem with America going to war over like the stupidest shit, and literally bombing innocent cities, killing innocent people.
Yeah,
We did 2 atomic bombs and killed entire innocent cities. Like, but most people don't have, they're like, oh yeah, like, well, that's war. Like, that's
Yeah.
just a casualty of war. Like, okay, so like, are you saying exactly, like, that's what we're saying? Like, that's a casualty.
Because that's the
this.
point that it's reaching, is that
Exactly.
people are that upset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that should be seen, and it is being seen. Thank God. It's the biggest civil rights movement we've had in a long time.
Right.
Which
Like, peaceful protesting is good, but it can only get so far. Like, they've been peaceful protesting, and it has not been doing anything. Colin Kaepernick, he took a knee, and people hated it. They were like, "Oh, you can't do that." Like, that during our national anthem, like, they hate, like, that was a peaceful protest, and they hated it.
right.
And now that they're not, some of them are not being peaceful, some of them are, and now it's like, honestly, like, it's working. Like, and the whole world has, not only just America, but the entire world is now captivated by this.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome.
It is awesome. It is.
And the problem that I try to accentuate is that the problem is not just with police officers; it is with the whole country. I
Yes.
mean, because you have Ahmaud Arbery, who was jogging and was chased down by 2 white guys and shot. And that's nothing. They're not police officers. They're nothing to do with anything like
Right.
that. They're just people who saw an innocent man and targeted him based on the color of his skin. And the fact that that's happening is not okay. And it should be talked about.
Right, exactly. No, I agree. Like, this, because a lot of people who are kind of against the protests will say that, we can't just focus just because of one bad cop, it doesn't make them all bad. But, like, it's not even just about police. It's a huge part of it is police brutality. But
Yeah,
there's the other part is just that there's
Racist
huge,
people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
racist
In this
people in
country.
everyday life. Like, not even just police, like anyone. There can be
Absolutely.
people that are racist and will do horrible things in the name of racism.
And there, so I know people are really in like in a shtick about this kind of a thing, but
in a shtick.
Yeah, I don't know.
I like that word.
I don't even. I love
That's
using
a good
that
word.
word, and
It's a good old shtick.
I don't even think I use that. It's in a shtick, but anyway.
Good shtick.
So they're in a shtick.
Shit shtick.
They're in a shit shtick.
I like that better. That's good.
So in any case, so they're in a shtick.
Yeah, so they're in a shtick.
And so like we know that not all police officers are bad, okay? It's not it's not that all police officers are bad, but there is a problem with the system which makes all police officers at fault.
Yes.
All right. And I'm sure there are stations with no racist cops that have you know a good community, but most of them don't, and that's the problem. Almost the vast majority don't, and one bad apple, like they say, does does fuck everyone else over. That's not what they say.
That's what they say. It's a very official.
Everybody.
They all fuck everyone. No, so here's a really good point. So, all right, so imagine, right, that in your job, you go to work today. Okay, so you show up to work.
Sure.
And your boss says, "Hey, so one of your coworkers murdered someone. And there's people, they're protesting about it, they're rioting. So what I'm going to need you to do today is go in and shoot them with rubber bullets and use some tear gas and use whatever force necessary to stop them."
Right.
So if you could just do that, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So would you do that, or would you just be like, "Nah, fuck this. Like, never mind. I'm going to quit this job and I'm going to go do something else, or I'm going to stand with the protesters."
Yeah.
Like, that's the fact that there, and to the point, there have been police in some other cities that I've seen that have like stood with the protesters and laid down their weapons and just like went with them. That's what a good cop would do. Like, that's good. That's what they should be doing.
Where was that? It was Flint, Michigan, right?
Yeah, it was Flint, Michigan.
Yeah, it's like you never expect that.
No.
That was awesome. I do remember seeing that, and it was awesome. I highly encourage you guys to check it out if you haven't seen the Flint, Michigan video.
So, like, not all cops are bad, technically, but since they're not really, if you're not doing anything, that makes you bad. Like, if you're
Absolutely.
not doing anything about the situation, if you're, silencing these protesters, that makes you a bad cop.
And in my opinion. Yeah. And I would actually say the same thing about the general public. If you're watching this movement and I'm not going to say, if you're not participating, like it, you don't have to go to protests, but at least show your support in any way.
Right.
But if you're just silent about it and you're not saying anything, you're part of the problem. If you're just watching everything happen, excuse me.
Yeah, no, because I even saw a few posts from people that were saying, I just can't deal with seeing all of this on social media. And, if I post something and people argue with me, like, I'm just going to stay away. I'm going to post, or like they're going to post pictures of dogs or some shit, like cute dogs all day or like whatever. Or they're just going to stay away from it. And like that right there shows that you are privileged enough that you can step away from it. You can be away from it for a while if it's bothering you, or if it's getting too much. But people that live this, the black community, they literally can't do that. So like they live this. Yeah. So that just goes to show how privileged they are.
Well, yeah, and I mean, just think, like, imagine if that was your family member, if it was your brother who was murdered by a police officer, you would be just as angry. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's what we need. That's exactly what we need is our voices that are crying out in unison and in anger to really get this movement forward and for something to happen is my main point.
Right.
So I came up with some stats because I love when people make this point and people say to me all the time, yearly there are more white people killed than black people by police. And okay, first of all, fuck you, you're dumb. and the reason is because there are way more fucking white people in the country than black people. Okay?
Yeah, for real.
74% of the population in the United States in 2019. Obviously, we don't have the stats for 2020 yet, so don't go off on me.
Yeah,
2019 stats, 74% of people are white people while 12% are black, okay? So those
That's
numbers
huge.
equate. Yeah, it is. And so those numbers equate to 237 million white people, okay? 41 million black people. Okay. So, in 2019, 370 white people shot by police while 235 black people were shot by police, all right? So the percentage of white people that were shot by police is 0.000156%, while the percentage of black people killed by cops in the United States is 0.000573, okay? And I know those seem like small numbers in the overall population, which they are, but 156 and 573, that is 3.6 times, a black person is 3.6 times more likely to be shot by a police officer, which is fucking insane.
That's more than, so that's like, that's more than double.
It's almost 4 times. Yeah,
that's crazy.
That's crazy. And that's only counting police shootings and not all of the hate crimes, which there's a lot of. I mean,
and that's not going into, the specific cases and knowing why and the reasonings and all that. Like, because if you were to go into specific reasons, I'm assuming that if you were to look at, a person of color, a black person, if they were to do something, the same crime as a white person, I'm assuming their punishment would be harsher. And the facts do actually, there's a lot of statistics that do show that, if you do the same crime as a white person, as a black person, you're going to go off easier.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And people wonder why it's at this point where people are destroying things, and that's why. And this information is readily available to the public at any time. So it's like,
oh right,
you should know about this, and it's the same reason why every other revolt in human history has ever happened, because people are being oppressed, and it's not okay. And if you think it's okay, then fuck you and fuck your mom.
And fuck off. Fuck your dad. Fuck your pets. Fuck your fuck your children. Fuck them all. I saw you shared something. I think it was Seth Rogen. He's basically just saying fuck off to everyone. Like, that's amazing. That's hilarious.
He's
every
right.
comment like fuck off.
Fuck
off.
Seth Rogen's great.
Oh, that's so good.
Seth Rogen and who's fucking. I almost said Michael Scott. you know,
from The Office?
Yeah,
Fucking Michael Scott.
Fucking Michael Scott, yeah.
He gets it.
Steve Carell.
He knows.
Yeah, Steve Carell. They're both bailing out protesters, and they're
I saw that.
There's some serious justice warriors. That sounds weird. I don't know. They're part of the Ginyu Force. Wait, the Ginyu Force. I don't know. Just forget I said that.
Forget that whole part.
Seth Rogen's gonna hear this and be like, "What?
It's like, what
part of the Ginyu Force? The fuck?"
He hits a blunt. And he's like, "What the fuck?"
I am part of the Ginyu Force.
I can't do his laugh. I'm terrible. Sorry, Seth Rogen, if you're listening, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Don't tell me to fuck off.
He's a mockery. Fuck you. No.
He would anyways be like, fuck off.
All right. But yeah, I mean, if you want to participate, I mean, it's great to participate. Like, if you can participate, you should be participating. You should go to a protest. And I think, like, I know why there's a lot of people who don't, because they have children and they don't want to bring their children. Right. And children are getting hurt and, like, sprayed with tear gas and stuff, and that's awful. And I don't agree with... I don't agree with the people who are breaking random bystanders' cars, or smashing in their windows,
right?
And like taking their children out in front of or not taking their children. They're kidnapping children. No.
They're fucking kidnapping children.
But who are taking like their parents out in front of their kids and like beating them and stuff. We don't agree with that.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so it's. We very much realize that there is a line that shouldn't be crossed, especially when it comes to kids. So, I get that, and I get people being upset over that. But the biggest issue at hand is this movement, and that's why like I said before, there are casualties of war, and that just happens to be one of them. I mean, it sucks, but that's the way it is.
That's the way it is.
So another point is fucking I hate when people say like, oh, white people were slaves too. And
Oh my God.
so honestly, once upon a time I was one of those people. But
Yeah.
because but I wasn't really trying to make the same point as they were. When I said that, it was a while ago before I had educated myself.
Right. We
But
change, we educate. Like that's
yeah, and that's like the best thing you can do, and that's just something that
exactly.
I've learned. But back when I said that, I was trying to make the point that there were all cultures of slavery, but I did
Hmm.
still say even at that time that no other slavery is worse than African American slavery
Yeah.
because it's a different kind of slavery. That was like, you know what I mean? Being
Yeah. Yeah.
what was it, indentured servant to the British, when the Irish were indentured servants,
Right.
is not the same at all. I mean,
No.
you had to work, and some of them, and you might die. You might die working crazy long hours just to barely feed your family. That sucks, yeah. But it's not the same as being tied in the basement or chained in the basement of a boat, like covered in fucking feces and shit,
Yeah.
and
Literally.
and literally just having it just drain the life out of you slowly over all this time, over these long voyages. And I mean, that's really fucking terrible. I mean, that's just one of the things, but
And they love to say that, but like slavery doesn't even like slavery is a whole even separate issue. Like racism is the main issue. That is the biggest thing. Like
yeah.
regardless of who was a
Regardless
slave
of
at one
slavery.
point, like racism exists and it's very disproportionate towards black people. Like there is no competition between you cannot say that because white people at one point were a different and like you were saying it's not even the same. You can't even compare the types of slavery that were happening.
Yeah, right.
You can't just discredit the fact that African Americans have been hugely oppressed
And
and
yeah.
I'm not even talking, they love to be like, oh, like thousands of years ago. Like I'm talking about now
Still,
and very
today.
recently.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
like they weren't even allowed to vote until very recently. Like
Yeah.
they act like it was so long ago. It has not been that long. It hasn't even been 100 years. Like it hasn't been a long time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah, and then that's like fucking, there were different kinds of, like, I forget, ancient, like, Rome and stuff had slaves
Yeah.
of all colors and all
Yeah.
all people around the world. It didn't even matter if, that was the thing. I almost said that was the cool thing. I'm like, it's not cool.
That was the coolest thing.
That was the cool thing. No, but it was that it didn't matter what race. It wasn't even based on race. It was based on class. It was based on who you were and how much money you had and your fucking drachmae. No, I'm just kidding. That's Greek. I don't know if that's the same fucking thing. I'm not educated on that subject. But anyway, yeah. So no one has been oppressed as much as African Americans solely based on the color of their skin, and slavery based on the color of their skin. It's not the same at all.
Correct.
So don't
Correct.
ever try and make the point that it's close or that it's equal. It's not. We've never
No
been
way,
oppressed
yeah.
in that way, and we probably never will be.
Right.
So that's the case in point on this episode.
And okay, yeah.
No, yeah, no, yeah. I mean,
Well, yeah, no. Then there's the whole other argument that I whenever I hear this, it just makes me. And I'll be straight, real, and honest with everyone. In the like years ago, I don't know, when I was probably like 16 or something, I used to say this too, that whenever I heard Black Lives Matter, I was like, yeah, but all lives matter. Like, why are you saying Black Lives Matter? And that's just based out of pure ignorance, because when you say that, you're trying to turn this about yourself, and you're trying to turn this to,
it's a deflection. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge deflection, because all lives do matter. Everyone knows that. Everyone,
It's a given.
Fucking,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's-
Yeah. That shouldn't even be. You shouldn't even have to say that. Like,
Yeah,
that's obvious.
It doesn't need to be said. Yeah.
But all lives cannot matter until Black Lives Matter, and currently, shown by the oppression and how they're being murdered,
There are many people who don't think.
That Black lives don't matter. So until we can focus on them and focus on that, then all lives can matter.
So
But
if you're
right
one of
now-
those people saying all lives matter and you don't support the movement, then you are a hypocrite.
yeah, you're basically saying that, like, oh, like, you're preaching that all lives matter, but you're willing to not focus on the fact that, like, the injustices that they're going through. So you're really not focusing on their lives at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think one of the there were some really good points made, like different analogies and stuff. But I think a really good one is, like, let's say you are, you go and you buy like groceries, and you
Sure.
have them in a bag, right?
Sure.
And you're like, all right, all these groceries matter. Like, these are all important to me.
Yeah.
But one of the items in the bag is starting to fall, like, it's heavier, and it's getting heavier, and it's getting heavier, and it's starting to fall out of the bag. Like, it's going to rip through the bag, and it's going to break everything if it falls through, and it's just going to rip everything.
Sure.
Now, of course, all of these things matter, but you have to take care of the thing that's inside that's going to break everything else. And I think that's a really cool analogy, is like, yes, of course all lives matter, but you need to focus on the ones that are going through the struggle, that are facing this heavy oppression.
Yeah, like
first.
you said before, it's something that doesn't ever need to be said.
That's
obvious, and it's something that especially that if you do say it, you should support them. It should just be Black Lives Matter. It's really, you don't need to say that.
Exactly.
So shut up and stop saying.
So shut the fuck up.
Shut your fucking ass. All
right. Yeah, I think.
All right. So that's we just wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, we had to get that off our chest.
You guys want to hit the like and subscribe button. Those of you on YouTube, or if you're on Anchor, if you want to follow us, we usually talk about it's like a light comedic podcast, and we just talk about stupid shit together. And I'd like to think we're funny sometimes, but I don't.
Sometimes.
know.
Sometimes.
So yeah. So give us a follow if you want, and we will catch you next time.
The fuck was that noise?